Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons Insurance, where you can be a member of the Shannons Club. Pace Farm, the enjoyable egg. Hare and Forbes Machinery House. And Gun Lake Quarries.
Moving into 2021, with now over 650 episodes produced, I would like to show you some original footage filmed in the United States of America, along with some new stuff into that mix as well. Now at the moment, I might not be able to be in the United States, but my voice can, and you're about to see this recipe cooked and served as an all first in this week's Classic Restos on the road. Well, as you know, Classic Restos is known for its return trip to the United States every year with good mate and Shannon's business associate, Mark Behr. We never know what we're in for. It's always a trip of adventure, and I guess it's that adventure that keeps the mystique there for us to return and do it, the trip year after year. The quest, most times, of course, is for Mark to buy his classic car, pick it up from our friends in Ohio, and then we initiate the drive some 4/5 across the United States of America to his shipping agent in San Francisco. And of course I film episodes along the way. It's a challenge for me. I never know really what I'm in for. It's an experience each year to undertake, and it's a term of hard labour in some respects, but it's a labour of love, and that's what keeps us returning year after year. It's hard work over there. The days are big, the hours are long, but it's what you have to do to cover distances over there in the amount of time we have. And the cars that Mark gets, I'm not always sure what types of cars they are. Sometimes I do. But having said that, they're always great cars, and they make the trip across the country remarkably well. And although there's always usually a few little things that get done, we're talking cars usually around 50 years of age. And when you stop and think about that, 50 years, half a century. And like when this car here, this New Yorker, was made back in '67, if you went 50 years back from that, cars weren't too exciting. You know, if you were wealthy enough, you had a crank handle each morning to get yourself started for the day. Now, on the show, here is a United States flashback to 2016, where Mark and the family truckster makes its debut. And you can see that they kept this model, the shape and the whole theme of the big wagon and the wood grain for quite a few years. Now, Mark's car was pre-Griswold's, being a 1978 model. The Griswold's family truckster didn't happen until the 80s, and there'll be some more on that very soon. Now keep watching, because later in the show there's going to be something happen that ties in very nicely with a striking similarity to what Mark did with his trip and his Mercury wagon. ...2016, that was a big year. I take my hat off to Mark. The way that he does this, he buys an old car, gets some mechanical work done to it prior, and then drives it across the United States of America. How cool is that? Some people get stressed out driving their classic cars, you know, from town to town here in Australia, but doing such a large trip every year. And the cars are so good. Mark has got this calmness about him. It's almost as though the longer the trip, the better. And we're not just talking straight roads here. Mark will think nothing of going across a mountain range in Colorado with ice and snow and going through the deserts of Utah. And I really like that. I take my hat off to the guy. Now, 2016 was when we met Mark's Woody Wagon for the first time. A 1978 car, a Mercury Colony Park. Hamburger with the lot. Everything that opens and shuts. In fact, if you look hard enough, you may even find the hamburger. But I think this car was originally from Colorado. It was a geologist's car, and no wonder it was such a gem. This wagon was straight out of the box. CB radio in it, the whole block and dice from the 70s. Very, very cool. And stock standard, comfortable, put 30 people in it and run all day. Mark often sends me links to stuff to watch online, and I do enjoy those. He did send me this link of a young guy, a guy in Texas, United States of America, that drove his car across similar states that we do every year. Lo and behold, it was a wagon. A bit later than Mark's. This guy drove a 1986 Ford LTD Country Squire LX. And at time of filming this, Mark has no idea what I'm doing here. But me being me, I love the story so much of the link that he sent me, I immediately made steps towards contacting this guy over in Texas, and found out that the wagon has been in his family since brand new. His grandmother bought the car, brand new, and it's a lovely story.
When I was a kid, I loved cars.
I've been a motoring enthusiast all my life.
My life is hot rods, designing them, building them, and racing.
Hand-built with a stainless steel roof.
It won the Monte Carlo Rally 4 times.
Like Dad, I've always been a Ford man.
In '71, this was the fastest four-door car in the world.
Insurance? Shannons, of course.
Heron Forbes Machinery House has been family owned and operated for over 85 years, and it's easy to see why. Planning on welding? Look at these welding tables and clamps, air compressors and different air tools, sandblasting cabinets, through to spray guns. Everyone is welcome at Machinery House. There are competitive freight rates around Australia, and you can buy online at machineryhouse.com.au. So remember, Hare and Forbes has the range. An absolute exclusive on this week's episode of Classic Restos. I'd like to introduce Connor DeNicker from Dallas, Texas. Got him on the phone now. Connor, how you doing?
Fletch, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Thanks for your time. I'm absolutely blown away with the story of your wagon. As I've alluded to in the episode, a good friend of mine, Mark from Shannons, sent me the link, and I just had to pursue it. So, Connor, before we start talking about the wagon, just a little bit about yourself, if you want to share with us your age and what do you do for work there in Dallas, Texas?
Yeah, absolutely, Fletch. So I work for Ford Motor Company. I'm based in the Dallas region, and so I work directly with the dealers to help improve the customer experience for Ford and Lincoln customers here in Texas.
And that's wonderful. And tell me, this wagon that you've got from your grandmother's, what do you drive that around as a publicity stint to the dealers?
You know, the dealers love when they see older vehicles that come in. They don't always enjoy working on them so much, but just being able to see a different style of vehicle that isn't made anymore. They used to be everywhere, and now they're not. And so it's as much of a trip for people at the dealerships as it is for regular people walking down the street when they see me driving around.
We all know how strong the classic car fraternity is in the United States. These cars, that's where they were designed, that's where they were built. We see them on the roads over there now, and look, they're just masterpieces. Some of them, you know, in design could be even looked upon as gaudy, but yet so cool. Like a wagon with, you know, wood grain paneling down the side, like fake wood grain. I mean, how cool is that, Connor?
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It was something that was certainly fashionable for a time, maybe not anymore, but I think it's set to make a comeback. Really with everything on that car, from the, aluminum trim to the fake vinyl wood, to all of the vinyl and plastic wood applique to the interior. It's just a testament to man-made materials and kind of the changing conception of style and luxury. I mean, it was a high-end car, probably the most expensive Ford that you could purchase in 1986.
Connor, before we go any further, can you share with us your age?
Yeah, I'm 27 years old.
You're a young guy that has an appreciation for this stuff, which I love. I totally respect that.
Starting out growing up, I was always interested in cars. Had a huge set of Hot Wheels cars, that I would line up across the floor, equally distant. I'd make a parking lot. As an enthusiast myself, I own 5 Ford vehicles that are older that I enjoy maintaining. It's not just a job, but it's a hobby, and I'm really blessed and honored to have the position that I do.
The history of this wagon. Now, tell us from the start, how did it end up in your family? What's the deal there, Connor?
Yeah, so I get that quite a bit, as far as being having interests in preserving things that have been around. As you mentioned, this wagon is a bit of a family heirloom. My grandmother bought it new in early 1987. It's a 1986 model. It was actually used as a demo at the dealership. I think the owner of the dealership had his wife driving around in it because it was one of the nicest cars on the lot at the time. It has nearly every option that was available in 1986, and my grandparents got a great deal on it. Being part of an older generation, they like to buy things once, keep, and maintain them. So she drove it for around 20 years regularly until a series of issues led to them deciding to park it. So ended up sitting in a barn on their property for about the last 12 to 15 years. I think only was driven maybe a couple times within that time frame. Probably hadn't moved in the last 10 years. So finally they were consolidating some of their belongings, and they let me know that if I was interested, that I was welcome to take that wagon out of their barn if I could figure out a way to move it and get it from Idaho, which is 1,600 miles from where I live, down to Dallas, Texas. So I did that in July of 2019.
Being grandparents, why were they inspired to buy a wagon? It's not sort of the thing that the people at that time of life would buy, or correct me if I'm wrong there in the United States, Connor.
Yeah, well, I think it was something that she had always wanted but was never able to have. The Ford LTD being more of a luxurious vehicle, shows success. And I feel that my grandparents had reached a stage in their life where they were in a position to purchase that type of a vehicle. And being something that she had always wanted, she decided to get one.
Tell us, Connor, what do you love about this wagon? Just run us through a few things that you personally adore about this car.
Yeah, so from a personal standpoint, I enjoy being able to keep things in the family. I feel that my grandparents worked hard, obviously, to buy something that was as nice as this, and they were proud of it and really trusted me with being able to take it and bring it back to life, which I have. As far as the vehicle itself, I love that it has a style that is not seen on the roads today. Gets a lot of attention from people who are enthusiasts as well as not enthusiasts, just because they grew up around those vehicles, and they don't hardly see them anymore. As far as the utility aspect, I like the amount of room, of being able to carry things with me and put things in it. I like the luxury and the quiet ride comfort, the quiet cabin as well as the ride comfort.
We look at the photos on screen, and look, there's no doubt about it. This car is like, it's a moving lounge room. It looks comfortable. It makes you just want to sit in there and stay in there all day. That's one beautiful thing about it. I also love the names that, for example, Country Squire, proudly down the back of the rear quarter section there. It's the attention to detail that these American cars received as well, Connor.
Yeah, and the attention to heritage that comes along with that vehicle, the full-size Ford being one of the most popular vehicles in America of all time, and the Country Squire nameplate going back to the 1950s, lasted all the way through to 1991, being a wood-paneled family station wagon. And it dates back to the time when in the United States, they built station wagons with actual wood on the sides, and in the 30s and 40s with actual wood doors.
Connor, there's some pictures here of the wagon getting pulled along on the car trailer behind the white Ford truck there. What's the story there? Why is the wagon up on the car trailer?
Yeah, so last year when I decided to resurrect the wagon, my grandparents invited me up to get it, and the biggest part of the journey was figuring out how to get it 1,600 miles across the western portion of the United States from Idaho down to Texas. And so I drove my company-issued 2019 Ford Ranger up there and rented a car trailer. My grandfather used his tractor actually to help push the immobile wagon onto the car trailer, and because we couldn't figure out why the wagon would run at that time, and then I was able to pull the wagon down to Texas on that car trailer. So I went through Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico, and then into Texas, which the western part of the United States is home to the Rocky Mountains. Utah and Colorado are very mountainous, and which was very interesting because in many ways the car was larger than the truck that was pulling it. And I had that suggestion many times from people when I was at the gasoline stations asking me why I wasn't pulling them the other way around. But I'll tell you, those new Ford Rangers are fantastic and have plenty of power actually to pull such a large vehicle. It was probably close to 7,000 pounds. Now
the Ford freaks here in Australia would love to know what it's running. Is it running the 302, the 5-litre engine, Connor?
It is, yeah. It's a 302 cubic inch, 5-liter V8.
Okay, Connor, now we're going to leave it there because after the break, we're going to be back, and Connor has a very interesting story of his road trip that he endured with his wagon across many states of America.
Every weekend around Australia, motoring enthusiasts get together to share their passion for cars and bikes. It's a passion that brings us together. All sorts of people, all sorts of cars and bikes, from the classics of today to the classics of tomorrow. At Shannons, we understand enthusiasts, so when it comes to insurance, it's got to be Shannons. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts. Call 13 46 46 for a quote.
Got a classic? Got to get it with Shannons. Why not pick up the phone and give Shannons a call for a quote and a chat on 134646. And when you get an opportunity, check out the Shannons Club, where you'll find their own in-house productions. Shannons Club TV, Legends of Motorsport, Driven, End of an Era, and of course Classic Restos is there as well. You can also check out the Shannons auction houses. There is just so much awaiting you. For more information, visit shannons.com.au. Welcome back. Well, you've heard a little from Connor sharing with us the history and information about his Woody wagon. But now it's how this car brought 3 generations of family together for the holidays. And I am in for a big phone bill because Connor is still on the line. Now, Connor, having this wonderful wagon that you have is one thing, but then getting out and driving it is another. And I'm not just talking about round the local side streets and around your town and in and out of the diners. I'm talking about a big road trip that myself and I know Mark from Shannons can totally appreciate. Now, you took this wagon across 10 states, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how about you tell us about the trip? Tell us about where you started, a little bit about how the car ran, the states that you visited, and just a little bit about the road trip.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you talk about, poking around the local town and the side streets, yeah, that's no joke, because when I got this wagon, put the fuel pump in it and got it back to life, any car, classic car, you have to test it out, right? And so I had not taken a trip in this wagon that was longer than an hour. I'd gone further than 100 miles at a time in this wagon before I decided to drive it across country. And I ended up covering 10 different states. It was 4,200 miles in 10 days, and I'd only put maybe 1,000 miles on the car since I'd had it before this trip. So it was quite the undertaking to decide to leave and go take the trip. So the reasoning behind that was actually my grandmother that I got the wagon from regrettably passed away in November. And American Thanksgiving is at the end of November, and we didn't want my grandfather to be by himself for Thanksgiving. And so, I really wanted to go visit him, and not just go and see him, but, bring something, a piece of my grandmother with me, and sort of reaffirm his decision to get me the wagon, and also see that I had got it back on the road and ready for a trip of that magnitude. So taking off, I left with about 5 days of reserve to be able to get where I was going. Did about 300 miles per day in the wagon. Got to the north end of Texas from where I live, which is about 6 hours away, no problems. Went and entered into New Mexico and up into Colorado. And I was really trying to make good time, get to the other side of Colorado. It was about 12 hours of driving that I was trying to get done that day. And I ended up just on this side of the Rocky Mountains on the eastern slope, had my vehicle cut off on me. So I was coming down a hill, it just shut down and would crank but would not restart. And so there I was on the side of the road at night. It's wintertime, here in the this hemisphere. So it was pretty cold, around 25 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm on the side of the road trying to get a ride, and I'm roughly an hour from the nearest town that could even dispatch a tow truck. So I wasn't sure what was going to happen with the rest of my trip at that particular moment. I found that I did have spark, I just did not have fuel, and it meant that there wasn't anything that I could do about the fuel flow issue where I was on the side of the road. So ended up waiting an hour and a half. I got a tow truck into the local town, had it dropped off at the Ford dealership, and went back in the morning. Talking to them, they were so busy, could not fit me in. Also had trouble finding the right fuel pump. So I found a Mustang, a fuel pump from a Mustang, which is very similar to the one that was in the wagon. Thank you, Ford, for having sort of uniform parts back in the 1980s. They were able to get the vehicle on a lift and put the new fuel pump in it. So good news was when they got it back down on the ground, the vehicle started, ran, drove perfectly normal. And I was able to get another hour and a half down the road from where I was, and my vehicle did exactly the same thing again. And I had purchased a new fuel pump relay as well, and I tried fixing that on the side of the road. Now I was stranded on the side of an interstate. At least I was closer to town.
Yeah.
And I was able to get another tow truck ride into the next town, the next Ford dealership, and went back there in the morning. So 2 nights in a row of being on the side of the road, and I'd only gone, maybe 100 miles throughout those 2 days.
Connor, just in ending, digressing a little bit back to your grandfather. Now, just tell us, Connor, how does he feel about all this, that you've ended up with his wagon?
Yeah, so on that trip, I really wanted to make it a surprise that I was coming to see him, especially with the wagon. The surprise ended up getting leaked when I broke down for a couple days because I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. My goal was to be there on Thursday by dinner time, and I happened to show up right at about 4 in the afternoon. Of course, he had recently lost his wife, and the fact that it was something that she had and was proud of, he was just glad to see that people were keeping her memory around, and, really being able to not only spend time with him, but honor and appreciate the work that he's done and the things that he's had in his life, including this wagon. And just to see that legacy in the family be carried on.
That's beautiful. And what are you going to do with the wagon from here on, Connor? You're just going to leave it as is, just enjoy it?
Yeah, that's the plan for now. I'm one of those people where if it's not broken, I'm not going to fix it. I've replaced all the fluids and all of the consumable materials in the wagon, shocks. Went with actual police car shocks, which improved the ride quite a bit. It's much less bouncy than it was before, but still very comfortable, and it's reliable. And so until I have to do anything else, I'm not going to touch it. The car had 42,000 miles when I got it. It has roughly 48,000 miles on it now.
Yeah.
So it has a lot of life left in it. Considering it hasn't gone very far to this juncture.
If you just keep driving, it'll keep things running and things moving nicely, and that's the whole thing. They can sit around for a little while as long as you just keep them running now and again. Connor, it's been absolutely wonderful catching up with you. It's been an absolute privilege having you on this episode of Classic Restos, and working in with such similarity with a trip that we did a few years ago, Mark from Shannons and the Wagon that he bought. Oh, I have to ask you, what did you think of that episode?
Oh, it was tremendous. You know, his car, much similar to mine. They just don't build them like that anymore. And so to be able to keep them around and across the country where people could see it, and kind of experience the previous era of motoring. I believe that the countryside just looks different to a hood ornament, which you can't get these days. The pedestrians don't like those, but I happen to like them, and so I'm going to continue driving my wagon.
That's a good way of putting it. The view through the windscreen is one hell of a hood ornament, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it shows you where the hood ends. It feels like it's about 15 feet in front of you.
All right. Connor Danica in Dallas, Texas, thank you so much for your time. And I do promise you that I will be catching up with you when I get to Dallas, and I'll be meeting up with you. You have my word on that, okay? And we'll do something and have you back, hopefully in a personalised interview on the camera for Classic Restos. How does that sound?
That sounds great, man. You have an open invitation, Fletch, anytime.
Thank you very much, Connor. We just don't know when, but don't hold your breath, but we will get there. All right, Connor, thank you very much for your time. I love your wagon. I love what you've done. Please give our regards to your family, and it's just been so good talking to you, okay?
Yep, thanks, Fletch. I appreciate you.
Well, I hope you've really enjoyed this week's episode of Classic Restos, a 2016 USA flashback where Mark acquired his Woody wagon and finding out all about Connor and his car. I hope you've really enjoyed the show. Until next week, no matter where you're watching Classic Restos from, please ride and drive safe. I'm Fletch, and I thank you very much for watching.
You can like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ClassicRestosTV and watch catch-up episodes at shannons.com.au.
Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons Insurance, where you can be a member of the Shannons Club. Pace Farm, the enjoyable egg. Hare and Forbes Machinery House. And Gun Lake Quarries.